I'm going to walk you through the 5 things that you need for a complete life organization system. And if you're starting from scratch, feeling overwhelmed, or don't know where to start, this video will give you a 30-day program to get you started on your newly organized life. The tier system is a simple, science-based program to help you feel more in control of your day-to-day life. Let's jump in right in the middle. The first thing you'll need for a life organization system is some way of managing your events, also known as a basic calendar. This is going to be your go-to single source for where you need to be and what you need to do. If you're starting your system from scratch, you want to take the first 1 or 2 days to research the different digital calendar options that are out there. I love Google Calendar, but there are plenty of options out there, including Apple Calendar, the Notion Calendar, or even an Outlook calendar. Most of these calendars have really similar functionality, so don't get bogged down in trying to pick the best one. After you get a feel for the functions that you want out of your calendar system, we could always change down the road. And if you're confused about where to start, I always recommend Google Calendar, which is a free web-based calendar that you can get using a Gmail account. There are parts of this life organization system that could happen in analog form, and I'll talk about that at the end of the video. I'll leave a timestamp right here. But I feel very strongly about having a digital calendar for several reasons. The first one is what you'll be focusing on day 3 if you're following along on the 30-day journey. Day 3 is about syncing your calendar throughout your digital world. Digital calendars allow you to see your time-based events across multiple platforms, including your cell phone, your computer, and even a smartwatch. This third day ensures that you have access to your calendar 24/7 and that every platform is syncing and talking to each other. It's essential that your calendar is up to date on all platforms, and this is really something that is most easily done in the digital realm. On day 4, you want to identify your life domains. Life domains are different roles and responsibilities or areas of your life. This is going to help ensure that you have a holistic picture of what's going on. And there's an easy exercise to identify your life domains. Use your digital calendar or download a sheet with an hourly breakdown of a week overview. It should look something like this. Then walk yourself through every individual day of the week and identify what you're generally doing during those time blocks. It doesn't have to be hour to hour. You're looking for large blocks of time that you're spending in an individual role or responsibility. For example, my morning block has 2 hours of what I call my morning routine. During that morning routine, I am getting up, I'm working out, I'm making myself breakfast, I'm packing my lunch. Everything within that morning routine is actually related to health and wellness. Then I have a 9 to 5 block related to my 9 to 5 job. I pick up my son, I cook dinner, I spend some time with my husband. That is my family block. And in the evening, I'm working on my YouTube channel, so there is my YouTube block. For most adults, there's also random chores related to life, things like budgeting, getting your car's oil changed, or even tidying up around the house. This could be classified as a large life admin block or separated into subsections. For example, I have a physical spaces life domain, and that has to do with upkeeping my home, doing chores related to that house, and even upkeeping my car, which I consider one of my physical spaces. You're going to use your life domains to set up your calendar categories on day 5. These calendar categories should closely mirror your life domain. Here's my list of my calendar categories and my list of life domains, and you'll see that they roughly correspond to each other. Now that your calendar is all set up, you're going to input your timed events for the next 7 to 14 days. This is going to give you a realistic snapshot of your schedule on a weekly basis. In order to systemize this process, look at what's on your calendar for the next 2 weeks and identify what things are reoccurring. My calendar has regular meetings, recurring sessions with my clinical or coaching clients, as well as more mundane things like picking up my son at the same time every day. Before you move on to day 8, take a look at your life domains and ask yourself if there's any reoccurring tasks within those domains. For example, in my physical domain, I'm in charge of doing the laundry in my house. So I know that every 2 or 3 days, I will be doing the laundry. I take a look at my calendar for the next week or 2 and identify a time that seems to be open for me to do the laundry. Then, since I know it's a recurring task, I schedule in the laundry as a repeating task every 2 days. All right, you're done with part 1. You have an event manager. Let's finish up the system by starting with the T, your task management system. The goal of days 8 to 12 is for you to leave having a task management system that works with the way that you think and work. Just like we did in days 1 and 2, we're going to use days 8 and 9 to research different task management systems that might work for you. I'm a huge fan of Notion, but it can be kind of complicated, especially if you're a beginner. There are plenty of task management systems, including Google Tasks, Todoist, TickTick, Things3, or even an analog planner. And that's the first difference between an event manager and a task management system. With the event manager or the calendar, I really encourage people to identify a digital calendar. With the task management system, I'm more open to flexibility, and I encourage people to have more than one system, including at least one analog way that they can write down things that need to be done. Limit your search to only 2 days, and if you're having problems selecting a task management system, I encourage you to go with the Notes app if you're an Apple user, or Todoist if you're an Android user. Both options give you a clean interface that's easy to learn and manage. And if you're comfortable and a little bit more familiar with Notion, that is my personal choice. We're at day 10. Today I want you to focus on brain dumping all of your tasks. If there's anything that you think you need to do, anything that you've been avoiding, anything that you'd like to do, dump it all into your task management system. This is also an excellent way to test the ease of entering new things into the system and exploring some of their features. Now you have a full list of tasks. And don't worry if you forgot something, you could always go back and add additional items once we move on to day 11 and 12. During these 2 days, you're going to set up an initial structure to stratify or divide your task list. One way of dividing your task list is to separate your personal life from your professional life. Another highly underrated but very useful way of dividing your to-do list is to have your to-do list separated by context. This means that you'll have one list for when you're at work, one list when you're in front of the computer, one list for things that you can do when you're sitting in your car. These lists take away the guesswork for what you should be doing in specific places or situations. I've used this strategy when I've been at jobs that are really cognitively demanding, and I tend to have big fluctuations in my energy and my ability to handle complex tasks. In those positions, I've separated my tasks into high effort and low effort. And when it's about 2 o'clock and I'm feeling that midday slump, I'll bring out my low energy list and I'll start tackling those tasks. When it's a Thursday morning and I'm feeling really energized, I pull tasks from my high energy list. Let me know if you want a full video on different ways that you can handle a to-do list. But for now, the goal of day 11 and 12 in the 30-day process is to identify a system that works for you. We're going to revisit how to pick what to do within that list later on within these next 30 days. But for now, we're just practicing how it feels to decrease your cognitive load by having smaller to-do lists. And if you're wondering where this information is coming from, hi, my name is Dr. Jamie. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and behavioral scientist who focuses on performance optimization. I'm also low-key obsessed with how people divide their to-do list. The goal of day 11 and 12 in the 30-day process is to identify a system that works for you. One of the ways that I differentiate psychologists or professional behavioral scientists from some gurus or laypersons on the internet is this understanding that not every system works for every person. In coaching clients or even in a clinical setting, it's important to understand general concepts and to have different tools or options that you can use with different people. So I can't tell you that my way of dividing tasks is going to work for every individual, but I can present you with several options that you can choose from and that are going to work best with how you think and how you work. Let's move on to part I in the system. Your inbox. Your inbox is how things are going to come into your life organization system. And here we're going to set up 3 different inboxes. That's going to cover everything that life can throw at you. First, you're going to identify a digital inbox. If you're using a digital task management system, that's a separate list where you can quickly capture new inputs. If you're using an analog system for your to-do list, I still recommend that you have a digital inbox because most of us are walking around with a phone in our pocket and a convenient way for you to capture these digital inputs. On day 13, you're going to practice putting in your new inputs. That could be tasks or events into your digital inbox. Day 14 is about establishing an analog inbox. If you're away from your phone, or it died, or you're in a situation where you can't readily access your phone, you want to have some other way of capturing things. This is something familiar to most US military service members, where they're always encouraged to have a piece of paper and something to write with in the event that they're not able to get to an electronic device. It's something that I've implemented in my everyday life. I try to have a piece of paper and a pen in my car, in my purse, simply always having a place where I can write things down in the event that I need to. Finally, get a physical inbox. If you're writing things down on scraps of paper, on Post-its, I'm so happy that you're writing things down, but a physical inbox allows you to put all of those disparate pieces of paper into one physical location. Also, we're still getting mail these days, and I'm not sure when it's going to end, but every now and then you will get a physical piece of paper in the mail or from your kid's school or slid under your door with information that you're going to need for some reason. Part of a life organization system is having a physical location where you can put in physical items. Day 16 brings us into the R, the reference management system. This is where a lot of my clients get really nervous because we start cleaning up their digital space and their physical space, and sometimes there's a little bit of resistance. Stay with me for a little while and feel free to leave any comments that you have in the comments section down below regarding struggles that you have letting go of physical or digital things. On day 16, we're going to collect all of our digital files and put them in one location. At work, that might be creating a new file folder and dropping all of your digital files into that folder. At home, it might be clearing out your desktop and putting all of those things into a file folder. Don't worry, we're not going to delete anything. You're simply going to label that file folder with the date that you are doing this collection. I like to label it all files before June 15th, 2025. Rather than organizing all of your current digital files, we're simply developing a holding file where we can search for those older files as needed. That's all you have to do on day 16, put all of your files in one place, label it, and move on to day 17. Day 17 is about establishing your filing system moving forward. That filing system is going to depend on the type of work that you do and the type of life domains that you have more generally. I really enjoy Tiago Forte's PARA method for organizing digital files. His acronym stands for Projects, Areas, Resources, and Archive. And this is the system that I use in my professional life. I set up my file system starting with these 4 basic files. In projects, I have a file folder for each individual project that I'm working on. In areas, I have a folder for each area of my work life that doesn't have to do with a specific project. For example, as a manager who oversees other scientists, I have an areas section for each individual scientist working within my lab. In the resources folder, I keep any files that I might have to refer to on a regular basis. And finally, in archive, I have project files that are done, areas that are no longer areas that I'm working on, or resources and references that are out of date or that I'm not using on a regular basis. This allows me to keep all of my digital files, and I don't have to erase anything at work, but I get to keep my space nice and clean since I spend most of my time in the projects and areas section. I'll link Tiago Forte's full book in the description box down below, and while you're down there, consider subscribing to this channel. This is a really good structure for my work life, but I organize my home or personal files differently. I organize my personal files based on life domains. So I have files related to my physical spaces, my home, my car. I have a file for my son, mostly his school paperwork. And I have a file for my YouTube channel. The important thing here is to have a system. It could be a system at work and a system at home. It could be a unified system. Simply a way to organize your files that makes sense to you and causes the least amount of friction when you have to save a digital item. One last thing about digital files, a Harvard Business Review once explained how much time you should take labeling different digital files. I really liked this general rule. The more time that you take to accurately label a file, the less effort it's going to take for you to search for that file. So if there's a high likelihood that you'll need to find the item in the future, you want to take a moment to properly label it. I like to label my digital files starting with an 8-digit code related to the date where I'm saving that file. Then I try to be as descriptive as I can be with the file name. This takes a few extra seconds, but it's totally worth it when I'm searching through and trying to find a digital file that I haven't seen in several months. All right, days 18 through 20 are my least favorite days. Day 18 focuses on extracting tasks, events, and reference items from your active emails. If you have thousands of emails, just focus on the last 30 days worth of emails. Take the rest of the emails and archive them into a folder with the date, just like we did for our other digital files. We're not going to delete them, they're not going to be gone, and if we needed to find them, we could take the same amount of effort that it would take for us to search the larger email system to simply search that one folder. Now you're going to read through the last 7 to 30 days of emails, and you're going to start practicing pulling out tasks, putting out events, and pulling out references or resources from that email. Once you pull out what you need from that email, you can then file it away to a long-term reference system within your email. Here's an example. If I have an email that looks like this, telling me that they need me to go to a meeting next Tuesday, that goes into my event management system, which is my calendar. I'm simply going to cut and paste the relevant details for this meeting, put it in my calendar, and archive that email. This email is asking me to clean out a closet. That's a specific task, so I'm going to pull that task and put it into my task management system. If I get an email with a new leave or PTO policy, that's something that I don't need to action. It's not a task. It's not related to a specific event, so it doesn't go in my calendar, but I might want to reference that in the future, so it's a resource, and I need to classify that email as a resource and file it away using my email filing system. But I don't want it to linger in my inbox, cluttering up my space and making it more difficult for me to extract new events and new tasks and new resources because my mind is flooded with thousands of emails in this inbox and I have no idea what tasks, events, or resources are hidden in this mess. Now, how do you move your emails out of your inbox and into a more organized system? One of the ways to do it is to set up folders within your email manager that mirror the file system that you have in that area. At work, I unfortunately use Microsoft Outlook, and I make the files within Outlook look like the files that I have within my work computer. At home, I use Gmail, and I set up my Gmail file folders to mirror the digital file folders on my personal computer. We're coming to the last week of developing your life organization system. This is the S in the tier system, and it stands for system. This week, we're going to focus on putting all of the pieces of the system together so that they result in a cohesive process that allows information, tasks, and events to flow between different areas of the system with ease. This is going to start with day 23 when we revisit our task list and develop a task prioritization process. Task prioritization is a system that allows us to sort our to-do list in order to identify the next action item. It is quite difficult and causes a good amount of cognitive overload if you're looking at a list that looks like this. The goal is to identify a stratification system or how you're going to separate your to-do lists so that you can fully understand what needs to be done today, what could be done tomorrow, and what might be done at some point down the road. Part of the difficulty in actually getting things done is the decision fatigue that you get from trying to figure out what you should be doing, and the quiet anxiety that sneaks up when you think you should be working on something else. I am a huge fan of the Eisenhower decision matrix, which consists of separating your tasks into a 2x2 grid. Each square represents a high or low level of urgency and level of importance. If you choose to divide your tasks this way, it's going to be vital that you define what you mean by urgent and what you mean by important. I classify things that are urgent as things that need to be done this week. You might classify things that are urgent as things that need to be done today. I also take the time to understand what is considered important in each of these realms, my personal life versus my professional life. I literally have a list at work on the priority of things that I'm working on. At the very top is my clinical practice, since as a medical provider, that is my highest level of responsibility. but it's a small portion of what I do in my regular 9 to 5 job. I'm only at the clinic a half day, and I spend most of my time doing behavioral research. So right under there are the active protocols or projects that I'm working on, and under there might be some administrative tasks. Taking the time to walk through the importance of responsibilities that you have both at work and in your personal life will help to disambiguate what you should be working on or where you should be focusing your effort. The magic of this system is that it takes into account both how important a task is and how close you are to the specific due date or how urgently it needs to be done. When you take these two variables, it creates both a powerful and easy way to move forward. When you have things that are both highly important and highly time sensitive, those are things that you should be prioritizing to do as soon as possible. When you have things that are important, but you have a little bit more time before they're due, this group of tasks deserves your time and attention, and you'd likely benefit from finding some white space in your calendar where you can plug in time to have dedicated focus on that task. Things that are unimportant but urgent really get under my skin. Things like company training in an area that I don't work in, but everyone in the company is required to take that training, would fall into this category. Filling out pointless forms or answering emails that don't move a project forward also fall into that category for me. Tell me in the comment section down below, what tasks in your life do you think fall into the non-important but urgent category? Then there are things that are not important and not urgent. This is my I'll get to it when I get to it if I get to it list. If you decide to divide your tasks this way, I really encourage you to think about whether or not you need to do these things at all. And using the original Eisenhower decision matrix on how to handle different tasks encourages you to delete those tasks if at all possible. While we're on the original Eisenhower decision matrix, the box of not important but urgent is often considered the delegate box. But frankly, only a few of us are in the position where we can fully delegate those tasks. Even in my position where I have designated research assistants, I can't fully delegate all of the tasks in my non-important urgent category. I presented this stratification because it's my favorite, but it's not always the simplest, and it does take a little bit of time for you to define what's important and define what's urgent, and it also takes some time to actively move things into these 4 quadrants. So I have other options for task management strategies. One is to keep a running list of all of the tasks that you have to do, and every day pull out 3 to 5 tasks that are must-do tasks. Let me know if you want a full video on different ways that you can handle a to-do list. But for now, moving forward, regardless of what prioritization process you select, Day 24 is going to focus on utilizing that prioritization process. Just for today, try prioritizing your tasks using your identified process. See how much time it takes and how effective it is at ensuring you know what to do next. Then, on day 25, you're going to test out your prioritization process on a weekly basis by using the identified process to prioritize your next 6 days of tasks. Depending on your preference, some people like to look at their tasks and prioritize them on a daily basis, and some people prefer to prioritize their tasks on a weekly basis, depending on their preference and the amount of time that they can dedicate toward prioritizing their tasks. Now that you know what you need to do next, and you've put in all of your scheduled events into your calendar, you can identify white space or time available in your schedule to actually do those next action items. This is the first way in which different components of your system are starting to talk to each other and work together, which is the focus of day 27, establishing the system that's going to help you work from input through output. The reason this is called the tier system is because everything should end up in your reference section through utilizing your customized system. Once you have a way of funneling inputs into your system, they're going to fall into just 3 categories. They will either be a task to put into your task manager, an event to put into your calendar, or a reference for you to put into your reference or resources section. Things always start off as an input, but sometimes they move between tasks to events and eventually a reference. Try walking 3 different inputs through your system: a verbal input, an email input, and a paper input. One example of walking a verbal input through my personal system could be a conversation that I have with my husband. If he says we need to hire an exterminator for the ants in our backyard, that is actually a project. A project is a collection of tasks. So this is going to start off in my task system. It involves researching an exterminator company, calling them, scheduling them to come in, and budgeting the amount that I'll need to pay. The first action item is the only item that's going into my system. Research an exterminator goes into my task manager. Once I research the exterminator, I'll have a number to call, and now I have a new task: call the extermination company. Once I call them, I'll schedule the extermination, and that moves into my event manager and becomes an entry in my calendar system. That also generates a new task because I'll need to find money in the budget to pay for their services. After they're done with their service, I might want to keep a copy of the receipt, which goes into resources, or I might want to keep the name of their company so that I don't have to start from scratch the next time we need an extermination company. Their name and that receipt goes into my reference section. Hopefully, it will be a digital email receipt that I can file away within my email system, but in the off chance that they give me a paper receipt, I don't need to physically keep the paper receipt to get the information that I need. This is a perfect example of an item that I would scan in and file away in my digital files. Let's try a mail input. I'm waiting for an invitation to my sister-in-law's wedding. Congratulations, Jill. Once I get that invitation, I'm going to put the event date into my calendar, and I'm also going to generate a task: buy a present for Jill. That task is going to have a due date, and as we get closer to her wedding date, the level of urgency for going to the store to buy a present increases, while the level of importance stays the same because she's my family and she's important to me. And this shows how tasks could move within your prioritization process depending on a variety of factors. All right, let's do an email input. If I receive an email telling me that John was elected my new HOA president, that is not something that I need to action, so it doesn't go in my task list. It is not an event because I'm definitely not going to an HOA meeting, but I might need to know who to complain to the next time I want to paint my fence. So this is an input that I want to file away in my reference section in the event that I need to know who to complain to. Day 28 is one of my favorite days because we're going to actually codify and map out this system. You can do a fancy flow chart like my system right here, or you can just sketch out or write out what your system looks like. Going through this extra process helps to encode that information into your long-term memory and makes it easier for you to remember the process that you just developed. Finally, on day 29, you're going to decide on a review, reflection, and reset cadence. This is the process and timeline that you establish to maintain your life organization system. Just like your task prioritization process, some people like to review their system on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Whatever you choose, it is vital that you have some sort of review, reflection, and reset process. I recommend that on day 30, you try out a weekly review process. This seems to be a timeline that works for most beginners. And after you get a few weeks under your belt, you can decide if you want other processes to further refine your system. I personally use a combination of reviews and resets to ensure that my life organization system is up to date. But the weekly review and reset is the backbone of my process. If you're interested in seeing my step-by-step process, check out this video right here, or check out this video that YouTube thinks you'll like.